Hello, everyone. It seems weird to be saying hello again, but hello, and welcome back to the Japan Archives, episode 95 at this point. And we are here. Of course, we've been away for a while, checking the stats. We really appreciate everyone who's still been listening while we've been gone. We will talk a little bit about what's been going on at the end of the episode. Pretty much, we're going to jump straight in to get back into the history for you all this week. But a quick, of course, hello from me, and how are you doing, Heather?
Hi, Thomas. It's so nice to be saying hi again. And
Such a weird feeling.
I'm doing surreal, and
Real is a good word for this, I think.
I'm still not sure. And I'm a little chilly because we went from winter to fall for this podcast.
Oh, yes, very true. We skipped spring and summer.
Lovely to be here. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm mostly just excited that we actually hit record. But like I said, we're going to go into that a little bit at the end if anyone is interested. Just a quick update on how the episodes will run now. We're at a stage where we know that we can do it every week for you guys. So we're going to have a main episode every 2 weeks. And then in the second week, a very short episode, more like a culture clip, a song or a yokai or something for you guys. So we can be here for you every week now. And that is, for us, honestly, so exciting to be able to say that.
Hugely exciting. Oh my gosh.
It's so huge. So today's episode, Heather, do you remember what I'm talking about today?
If it's the notes I wrote like the last time we were going to try to restart, then yes. If it's not, then no.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the marathon that lasted 56 years. And it's almost, we tried to come back during when the Olympics were on. It's like, this is the perfect theme. But also, it's kind of themed quite well now because it feels like it's been 54 years since we came back. So
during your break.
So yes, today we are looking into the life of someone called Shizo Kanakuri. And he is a man famous for taking 54 years to finish a marathon that he took part in. And he also became known as the father of marathon in Japan, actually. Now, the marathon we are talking about dates back to 1912. It was the 1912 Stockholm Olympics marathon that he took part in. A little bit about his life. Shizo was born into a small town in Kyushu called Nagomi, and he was born August 20th, 1891. And he was born into a family of sake sellers. It's been said that from an early age, he did actually become accustomed to running. He grew up doing it quite a lot, as he would run nearly 4 miles every day to get to school and back.
Up the hill in the snow both ways.
Up the hill in the snow both ways. Exactly. It's one of those.
Sorry.
Don't know much about his actual life outside of the events about the Olympics. So we are jumping straight from childhood to the year before the Olympics. So in 1911, he took part in trials for the upcoming Olympics in Stockholm. Though the course was only, well, it wasn't the full length. It wasn't a full marathon that he took part in. It was a bit shorter than a standard one. He still placed a world record for the marathon at the time, which was him finishing in 2 hours, 30 minutes, and 33 seconds. And that's definitely quicker than I would do. I would never take part in a marathon. I would probably give in after the first 3 miles. I am not one for exercise. I don't know about you.
I have been trying to figure out how to do like a half marathon or 5K for like forever, and I still haven't done it.
You still haven't done it.
I'm trying to restart my running again. Well, I would say running. It's more like a light walk jogging, but I still can't get that back off the ground yet.
Well, at least you're doing more than me, so. Because of his marathon world record, of course, he qualified to go to the Olympics alongside another Japanese runner by the name of Mishima Yahiko. He didn't take part in the marathons. He was taking part in the 100 and 200 meter races. So only Shizo was the one who took part in the marathon for this Olympics. They were also the first Japanese to ever take part in the Summer Olympic Games. And it is said that to prepare for his training for the Olympics, he worked with a man called Kano Jigoro, who was the founder of judo. And that surprised me because I assumed judo was a very old and ancient sport, but actually not as old as I imagined. Now, we are traveling to Stockholm in 1912. And of course, in 1912, a journey from Japan to Stockholm was not an easy ordeal. First of all, they had to pay their own travel expenses. So even though they qualified, there was no help from the government as sponsorship or anything, and they had to raise 1,800 yen, which of course these days is not not that much. But according to the Yomori Shimbun, they figured out how much it would have been in today's value, and they basically needed to raise around 5
Oh,
million yen to get
oh,
to Stockholm. And they had to do this
oh.
by themselves. Luckily, 1,500 yen was gathered through a national fundraiser which was set up by his classmates. And his older brother, Sanetsugu, also managed to raise the remaining 300 yen that was needed for the trip. So, luckily, through a lot of help, all the money was raised to get him to Stockholm. The journey itself took 18 days, first by ship and then through and across the Trans-Siberian Railway. The whole way, it said that he struggled to sleep due to several white nights, which is when I didn't know what this was, so I had to check. The white nights is the term for when the sun doesn't
Ah,
actually
yeah,
set.
yeah.
So you have nighttime sun, basically. So he was struggling to sleep
I mean,
during
as you
those
would.
nights.
Yeah.
He had a lot of problem with the local food because he'd probably never had non-Japanese food at that point, with it being 1912. And his coach, who went with him, who was not the founder of judo, his coach was a man by the name of Kyozo Omori. He failed to give him sufficient pre-race training, as he became basically bedridden with tuberculosis on the
Oh
way
gosh.
there. And Kanakuri himself couldn't train as much on the way. I mean, he was on the train, of course, but you still train a little. But he couldn't do much because he also got terrible hypothermia on the journey there. So, due to this, he arrived at the Olympics in quite a weakened state. So, now looking at the marathon itself. This was the first time that a marathon had actually gone outside the Olympic Stadium. So, it started in the stadium, they went out to do the marathon itself, and eventually circled back to finish in the stadium again. They decided to do it in a heat wave.
Oh no.
95 of the runners who entered the event, only 68 of them took part. And of those 68 that took part, only 36 managed to finish due to the conditions of the heat wave. So it was a bit of a mess from the
They
start.
say what how high the temperature was?
I am unsure as to how hot it was. The conditions were just described by some as brutally hot, some just said it was very hot, but it is agreed that it was a heat wave. Of course, running in a heat wave is probably not a good idea for anyone.
No, it's generally frowned upon.
So, because the marathon was done outside, it was a very dusty track as well. So, they were breathing in a lot of dust, which made it hard for a lot of people to breathe while they were running. And this marathon was the first Olympic fatality to occur.
Oh.
There was a man known as Francisco Lazaro who passed away due to the heat
Oh.
from an electrolyte imbalance. Because of the heat, he made the decision to cover his body in sweat to prevent heat burn from the sun. Due to the sweat that he'd covered his body in, it led to him being unable to sweat properly, which led to the imbalance in his
Ah.
electrolytes,
Oh
which
gosh.
then led to his subsequent death during the marathon.
Oh, that's horrible.
Like I said, it's safe to say the whole event was a horrible mess, and the reigning Olympic gold medalist at the time, a man called Johnny Hayes, called the entire event a disgrace to civilization. Kanakuri also had a bad experience during the event. Of course, he didn't die. That in itself is a terrible tragedy for Francisco and his family. And a memorial was actually made for him at the turning point of the marathon later on. But for Kanakuri, he became so exhausted under the sun that 16 miles into the race, he ended up finding his way into someone's garden party where he sat down and drank orange juice for a whole hour before thanking the family there for their help by giving them a piece of Japanese writing on a scroll. Now, Kanakuri, feeling that he had failed, he left the race without informing the race officials and decided to head back to Japan. Because he didn't inform them that he'd quit,
Ah.
he ended up on the Swedish missing persons list And there were stories about a lost Japanese runner in the country for many years after the Olympic event. And his name remained on the Swedish missing persons list for 50 years because they thought he just got lost running the marathon.
Still in the garden drinking the orange juice, apparently.
So after this, he was supposed to take part in the 1916 Olympics, but they were cancelled due to World War I. In 1920, he competed in the Antwerp Olympics, finishing the marathon in 2 hours, 48 minutes, and 45.4 seconds. And in 1924, he competed again in France, but this time he failed to complete the race. So time goes by. You know, he hasn't finished that marathon, but he managed to finish a different one instead. Decades have gone by, and eventually Kanakuri was rediscovered in southern Japan working as a geography teacher by a Swedish reporter who was visiting at the time. As the Swedish man discovered who he was and realized that he was the person from the marathon who hadn't gone missing, was invited back to Sweden in 1967 by Sveriges Television to finish the marathon that he never completed. Finally, on March 20th, 1967, he finished the marathon, with the official time recorded being 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 20.3 seconds. And to this day, this is the world record for the longest marathon completion. And I doubt that it's ever going to be beaten at this point.
He is number one.
Commented about the marathon, saying that it was a very long trip. Along the way, I got married, had 6 children, and 10 grandchildren. And quite nicely, and because he's obviously Japanese, and with his honor, he decided to visit the family that gave him the orange juice those 50 years ago. There, when he returned to the original house, he met the son of his original host. The original host was no longer there. And they explained to Kanakuri how the scroll that I mentioned earlier that he had given them in thanks for helping him all those years ago had been treasured ever since as a family heirloom. So they got it out and showed it him again. But he then told them he'd just given them an old customs form in thanks.
No.
So, yeah, he inspected the scroll that he had given them all those years ago, presumably because he'd forgotten what it was. And it said that, yeah, he sadly had to tell the family that he had only given them an old customs form from when he'd visited Stockholm the first time. And that's pretty much it for his life. Passed away at the age of 92 on November 13th, 1983, so this month. And there is a bit of a legacy, though. So I don't know if you've heard about it. I didn't know about this, but there is a race called the Hakone Relay Race, which starts in Tokyo, goes to Hakone, and then returns to Tokyo. It happens at the start of every new year, so it'll be happening in a few months. And it was actually established by Kanokuri in 1920 and still continues to this day, like I said. The race actually starts outside the Yomiuri Shimbun building, which is the same one that actually figured out how much he spent in modern day terms. But yes, like I said, the race itself takes place over 2 days, starting out in Tokyo. It goes all the way to Lake Ashi out in Hakone before doubling back to Tokyo. And since 2004, the top prize of this race has been named in Kanakuri's honor. So there is the story of the marathon that took over 50 years to complete.
お疲れ様でした。
Thank you for your hard work.
So he didn't complete a marathon, but then went back to another Olympics, completed a marathon. Did no one the records, like how did that get missed? How did he compete in another, and like some representative from Sweden didn't go, "Hey, I know that guy."
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But if you would like to hear about some of the other crazy things that happened in the race itself. So I can't find an original reference for these, but I do remember hearing about it once on QI, actually. Like there's nothing on Wikipedia about this. There are old websites quoting these on Wikipedia. I guess they got removed, but I have seen it mentioned on TV shows before. So I do feel that this is true. So a few of the other strange things that happened in this marathon due to it being brutally hot. The first to arrive at the finish line was a man called Frederick Laws. He dropped out after 9 miles, but just hopped in a car and drove to the end. The car broke down at the 19th mile, so he re-entered the race and jogged back to the finish lines. And when the officials thought that he had won the race, he just played along with his practical joke until he was eventually found out after the medal ceremony, and then he was banned for a year for his stunt.
Wait, just banned for a year?
Just a year, and then he later took part in the Boston Marathon in 1905 and won. So then Thomas Hicks was the first to cross the finish line legally after having received from his trainers several doses of, I don't know how to say it, strychnine sulfate, which was a common rat poison which stimulates the nervous system, and he had that mixed with brandy. He was supported by his trainers when he crossed the finish line, but he was still considered the winner. There was a Cuban postman who joined the marathon, arriving at the last minute. He had to run in street clothes that he cut around the legs to make them look like shorts. He stopped off on an orchard en route to have a snack on some apples, which turned out to be rotten.
Oh,
And the rotten apples caused him to lie down and take a nap. But despite falling ill from the apples, he finished in 4th place.
how did that even happen?
And the other crazy thing that happened,
Oh, of course.
there was a Swana tribesman named Len Tao. Len Tao finished 9th, but many observers were sure that Len Tao could have done better if he had not been chased for nearly a mile off course by aggressive dogs.
Oh, jeez.
So it was quite the mess
In a heat
of an
wave.
event.
In a heat wave.
In a heat wave, and it was dusty. Everyone got ill. Everyone got sick. There was a death, and one person was on a missing persons list for 50 years. It's quite the tale. Quite the tale indeed.
How is it that the craziest thing that happened wasn't 54
Yeah, the
years?
crazy thing wasn't him taking 56 years. I mean, a person was chased by a dog. Someone took rat poison. And what
Rode in a
what
car.
was the other thing I said? Someone just drove a car
Like-
to win.
like He was the original cliche.
He was. So yeah, so there you have it. There is the 54, sorry. 50, hello, notes? I don't know why I never said 56. 54-year marathon. There you go.
Extra 2 years would be at that point. The whole thing was just impressive.
All right.
And I love that his life, he went from marathoner to geography teacher.
It's quite the jump. So thank you everyone for listening to that. I hope it was an enjoyable first episode back. But yes, a little bit about where we've been. So for me at least, yeah, I was put into a situation where I guess we could say it was not safe for me. So I had to move to a new area, which also meant like finding a new house, finding a new job and all that. So that was taking a lot of my energy and time to deal with that. But what about you, Heather? What do you wish to divulge?
Topic 1 is I have a toddler. Topic 2 is we moved halfway across the country. So we
Also that
moved.
We both moved.
It's been an eventful few months, and it feels like it's possibly for both of us, I think, more settled in some ways. Definitely allowing us to be able to restart this again, but with honestly even more clearer heads than we had a few months ago. Even just like the time of the Olympics, we were going to try to record again. So it feels like, oh, this is a good time to restart. That's how it feels right now at this moment, to be able to consistently come back after all the things that we had to do and pack up and unpack.
But yes, that is a brief summary of where we've been. But yes, we're going to be here every week, and I'm very excited about that. So I guess for now, I'm going to say thank you all for tuning in this week. We've missed you all. We love you all very much. So that's everything from me today. How about you, Heather? It's so strange to say this again.
I know. I feel like I really want to say something, but I don't have anything other than just the sheer joy of this recording button still being on. Like the hope that everything gets recorded will actually hit the end button. And it's so beautiful to be seeing your face with that little red above it. And again, to hear that people still listen to us and we're hoping that you guys come back and we find some new friends and get to explore new topics and giant marathons and anything else that we might find interesting or you might find interesting. So thank you so much. And we really want to try really hard again this time, but have a heck of a lot of fun doing it.
So until next week, guys, bye-bye for now.
Do I make a new ending or do I use the old one? Oh no, now I have a crisis. 皆さん気をつけて。またね。
またね